What's going on, guys? How's everybody doing? Let me just make some sound adjustments. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is it's late afternoon here in New York. It's around 4:30. Give me a sound check and we'll get started. For those that are listening in on headphones, today you should have audio on both sides, left and right. Sound is good. So you see I have this new microphone now. So I have this Shure 7MB or whatever it is. I thought the Blue Yeti net, like, you know, if I'm interested in, you know, a piece of hardware, a piece of software, I do the same thing that everyone else does, right? I go onto YouTube. And I thought that the Yeti was a good microphone. And then I watched a bunch of microphone videos. And I thought, all the podcasters use this. So if all the podcasters, all the podcasts I listen to, they use this, I'm going to go ahead and get one of those. So we have a new microphone, new sound system. I have a Focusrite thing too. It's like a box. I have no idea what it does, but I needed it, so I got it. And then I have the cloud booster to I guess, increase the signal from the microphone, because I think the Shure is kind of a quiet microphone on its own. Anyway, all of the issues worked out. Unfortunately, yesterday's stream, I had to take that down. I had, for those of you that watch the stream or there during the stream, if you remember, I'll turn it up slightly. One of my chats that I was in, that I am in, a couple of the conversations were popping up on the screen. Some notable names that I don't want to dox anybody. It's two small groups that I'm in. So I pulled that down because I just didn't think it would be right to leave that up. I don't remember honestly what the messages said, but it could have very well been alpha, and part of being in those groups is an oath of silence, more or less. So I had to take that video down. And then I streamed last night while I was playing Warzone because my wife is on vacation again. She went back to the spot we just came from. This time she went with my sister and their friends to celebrate my sister's birthday. So I have, 3 days. I woke up this morning. I forgot that. So we're having a new roof put on. Our house, we bought this new house. I wanted to put solar on the back of the house, on the water side, and switch to solar because I think it's a good thing to do, to get off that grid, and to use solar. And part of using solar and part of getting solar means that they want to get you for everything, right? So they come and they check out your house and like, oh, your house would be great for solar. Yeah, no shit. Like the sun, rises over the front, sets over the back, and it's wide open, gets awesome sunlight. But of course, they're a roofing company too, so they're like, oh, we have to replace the roof. And I'm like, I just bought this house. They point a couple things out, and I'm like, whatever, just show me where to sign, and I'll just swipe. So that had to get delivered this morning. I was in pajamas. The guy's like, where do I drop the roofing stuff? I'm like, I have no idea, man. I got to move a bunch of vehicles first because my wife isn't even here, and I didn't even expect this. All right. Anyway, so that was a fun stream last night. I suck at playing Warzone when I'm trading. And yeah, Carbon Front is on. I did that this morning. Skirts are going to be going on in a little bit. They're a day late. Why is my dog? Motion detected at front door. Hold on 1 second, guys. I apologize. I have a delivery right now, so I'm just going to put you on. Be right back. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Little delay. I had so long story short, my sister's away. It's her birthday. So I thought it'd be nice to, let me turn the background music down a little bit. So I bought my sister something, and I have the key to her house. So I'm going to go to her house. I'm going to set up her gift in her house while she's gone. So I had it just delivered to my house right now. It's a 60-inch TV. So, and my sister's much younger than I, so, she's not going to be splurging on 60-inch TVs. But anyway, I saw her TV and I was like, you didn't need a TV. This thing is a joke. This thing is as small as my computer monitor. Maybe she doesn't even watch TV. Anyway, stream's going. Let's get started. Let me say hi to a couple people in the chat. Glad the sound is nice and crisp. Matt, El Camillo, what's up? Lord Samurai, how's it going? What's up, Dave? Adam, Asgard, what's up? Luna, what's up, man? Santiago, Elijah, Ross, Hammer, Cornholio, long time. Ross, long time to you as well. Video, Ronan, Donalyn, MG. Okay, so some familiar faces. If I miss you, I apologize. Chaplain, Igor, Benoha, Exodus. Average trader. The average trader. Hopefully we make you into an above average trader. All right, so first things first, before we cut into it, we're going to talk about BTC, talk about ETH. I'm not the person to talk to about the merge, so I'll just say that right away. We're specifically talking about profile, flow, price action, some narratives, obviously, but I don't get into any of the technicals. And talk about some alts, take questions, briefly touch on the macro. You guys saw my commentary this morning. But before we get started, like all streams, none of this is financial advice, right? This is strictly for entertainment purposes only. And that's that. I do have to get into one thing that I did touch on yesterday. And obviously, let's switch out of this. Okay, let's go bottom left. So I mentioned this briefly yesterday. So obviously we've been working with Phemex, alongside Phemex now for, I say working, we're not technically working with them. But we've been partners with them for going on 2 years. We've been, myself and my partner, Josh Rager. Yeah, you could say we're working with them. We've been on the core team now for 2 years. We're not based in Singapore. That's what I meant. So use the link Phemex.trade. I talk about this quite frequently. If you guys want an exchange that still doesn't require you to KYC, has great liquidity right now, feel free to check it out. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. They actually started their own launch pad. So you guys remember launch pads from, peak bull market, but they started their own launch pad where they actually vet every single project that comes through. So they do have a couple new projects that are going to be coming through. One of them is called, TokenBot. I have no investment in TokenBot. I don't have an interest in, like I said, starting to get outside of the realm of what I am good at. So I can't really value a token better than doing what, everyone does for fundamental analysis in the space. So I can't tell you anything specific about, the FA with regard to the token. I don't know a ton about the token. I do know that it's connected to all the other exchanges. It's sort of this algorithmic trading strategy token, allows you to buy into strategies. Now it has 206 tickers, Santiago. A while ago, yeah, they grew slowly. And so Phemex growing slowly is one of the reasons why they were not hit by the contagion at all, because they didn't loan anything out. And their point of growing slowly clearly worked out to their benefit because they weren't, in that collateral damage. Collateral damage, right? It was all about collateral. But they have this new launch pad. They're releasing a couple tokens on it. I don't have any of the tokens personally. If I do get any of the tokens, I will let you guys know. But just something to keep an eye on. The link is below as well. All right. I made brief mention earlier about, listen, if you've been on crypto Twitter long enough, you know that we go through these zeitgeist. Zeitgeist is the term zeitgeist means spirit of the times. So it's basically like spirit of the times with regard to what CT is focused on. It's the narrative, right? That's really what it is. I don't want to make it sound like, I don't want to talk bad about it, like talk bad about people being focused on the narrative and being, sort of following where the puck is going. But during COVID, during the Russia-Ukraine crisis, which is, the war, which is still taking place. Now, Pelosi, Taiwan, China, United States. Obviously, everything with respect to Fed policy more recently, because that's changed drastically in the last, 7 months. When these things occur, when there's these major talking points, they just become major talking points, right? But the problem is, on CT, there are people that, have large followings. There are some people that do a really good job of absorbing this stuff and picking it up like a sponge and applying it to their trading. But there are other people that like start suddenly talking like they have an authority on it. And nothing rubs me the wrong way like someone talking suddenly out of nowhere like they have an authority on the macro, right? We're talking about, for example, like someone who has been a price action trader or like a trader who's been using, fucking Ichimoku Cloud for as long as you could remember, and then suddenly knows everything about, the S&P 500, inter-asset correlations, the bond market, Fed policy, knows, Jerome Powell's social security number. You get the idea, right? It's like out of nowhere, suddenly they're an authority on the subject. And macro is, right, it's basically the sum of all parts. So the macro is the sum of everything. So basically everything combined, all the working parts of all markets, geopolitics added. It is the most difficult thing to master. It's the most difficult thing, honestly, to speak like you're an authority on it. And no one is an expert at the macro, right? You can't really say someone is an expert at something that you can't really quantify. So like an expert at what? Like it's like experts, honestly, of like social scientists, for example. And I might rub people the wrong way by saying that, but it's like, you're not an expert the same way that someone is like an expert sharpshooter, right? Qualifications are known in advance. You meet all that criteria, you whatever scores is whatever. And it's very objective where it's like, there's a lot of people that have informed opinions, but there are not a lot of people that can say that they are, there's a few really significant macro traders that have been around for a long time. If you think of like George Soros, if you think of, someone who's worked along George Soros, Stanley Druckenmiller, Paul Tudor Jones, these guys are legends. They're one of a kind. In that case, there's three of a kind, right? But it's not something you could just walk into and, oh, I understand what they're, suddenly I'm able to analyze, what the Fed says and number, interest rate goes up. So it means you have to do this. It's like, no, the point is you think it's that easy, but it's not that easy because they throw you a curveball all the time. So if you ever think like you have the macro figured out, then you might as well, like, why can't you just be a billionaire then? Like I just want to shake your hand because congratulations. I want to know the world's richest person at that point. So it just kind of rubs me the wrong way. And it's not about, like, people on Twitter get like super sensitive. It's not about like the thirst and the interest in learning, because that is what's awesome on crypto Twitter. We've gone through all these different regimes now, across the board. We've become more correlated to legacy assets. You've had to adapt. You've had to learn more, and that's great. But it's important to know that you're the student, not the master. All right. Not most of the people I see are acting like the master. And I know some of the masters that are on Twitter, and they're having a field day, kind of just mockingly laughing at crypto even more than they already did. So that's my little tangent on that. I have been trading now for off-angle camera for the webcam. The webcam's not on right now, right? I'm like, I just took all my clothing off. The webcam's not on. No, I'll put the webcam back on. I switched. And I know I didn't put my webcam on everything, but I'll add me again so you could say hi. All right. So I moved I rearranged my office. I told you guys about that. So I got, what do we got? We got some Basquiat prints, 2 Basquiat prints. I have a Matisse and then I have Menyet or something, the horse on the top of that car. I have a Matisse over here on that wall, and then I have this Gropper picture, which is awesome. It's the crash of 1929 stock. It's called the crash of the stock market, or the stock market crash. Pretty awesome. He was a cartoonist for newspapers. But I rearranged things in my office. I stopped blocking my window like a fucking moron. I don't know why I didn't think that was a big deal. Definitely wasn't, feng shui. So anyway, the macro is, a multi-headed animal, not something that you could say you have like ownership over. But I think I was beyond that at that point. I got a little thrown off when you asked about the camera. What was I going to say? Oh, okay. So I've been trading now for 16 years. I'm old now, guys, so I can't remember exactly. 2007, 2008 is when I, really started. Well, that was the end of college for me. That was when I started, thinking I was trading more seriously, which means just losing money in penny stocks. Had a job where I worked in traditional finance, but I was mostly a phone guy in the beginning. So, I talk about how long I've been trading, but that doesn't mean I've been effectively trading for 15 years. So hopefully that makes, some people treat me like I talk like I'm this person who's been trading all this time as if I've been trading, in a multi-millionaire for 15 years. That's not the case. So I had to come up too. So anyways, just get right into it. So this is the S&P 500 over BTC. This is the S&P 500 over BTC. I saw a couple people say they called this morning's move. Like, it's like, dude, no, the S&P was doing the pushing. So, Pelosi landed. So now the focus is on, obviously, tensions between China and the United States. Pelosi going to Taiwan. I don't know if that's the United States saying, like, what? We're going to do it anyway. And kind of like flexing in front of China. I never think it's a good idea for world powers to flex. I just think it serves us all for them to not have dick measuring contests when they have nuclear arms. But anyway, men are going to be men. Men are going to be men. Women are going to be women. Whatever. But not serious, right? But the S&P 500 and BTC still, very correlated. Very correlated. My wife's driving, texting me. I don't know where she's driving. She's on vacation. Probably going to the beach. Still completely correlated. We've had a significant bounce in the S&P. So we'll just take off of BTC real quick. Kind of just going over stuff I went over yesterday anyway. Give me one sec. Let me just type something real quick. We've had a significant bounce in the S&P. For good reasons, right? People are talking about the Fed pivoting already. I've said this a couple times now. The market is pricing in. So if you look at we'll go to the Fed funds curve. So just all of the contracts. And the terminal rate, right? The pivot, we'll just call it the pivot. The pivot's being priced in around, it looks like February to March now. It's moved back a little bit. So the market was pricing in an earlier pivot. The Fed is probably not going to go full steam ahead from this point moving forward. But I think it's really dangerous to be one of those people right now that are like beating the drum about QE starting again. It's like, nah, we got a lot of work to do. If there's some kind of massive recession, then there's something to be said for them, completely pulling off. But inflation is still an issue, right? Inflation is what? 9.1. And that's how they measure it, right? We know it's probably significantly worse, depending on where you get the data from. But that's still an issue. Now, the recession is, okay, the previous definition, move the goalposts, was 2 quarters of negative GDP, right? And we've had that 2 quarters declining GDP. And now it's suddenly that's not the case. And it's because there's actually a very, it's a unique situation, honestly. Employment, great, right? Certain areas of the market doing really well. Apple and Amazon. Amazon's a pretty good representation of the consumer. Not getting slaughtered on earnings, right? Beating. I'm trying to think of a couple other things as well. But there's some things that just don't line up that you would not normally see in a recession, right? So I think it's really dangerous to think that there's an actual pivot taking place. What's happened is QT has recently just began. The recession narrative has picked up steam. I said a couple months ago, remember I said, now we're going to start, the market is going to have to move. The market's going to be moving from inflation being the number one concern to recession. And at peak recession, we should see some relief. Now, what it looks like is that the market began to price in an earlier pivot. And I think a lot of that is due to, it's clear that the White House is redefining what a recession is, or compared to what it previously has been. If you look at like a Bill Clinton interview, he said it before, exactly what I said, about the previous definition. But you have people like Senator Warren. So Elizabeth Warren got on top of Powell. That's how we'll refer to it. She got on Powell about him basically causing, putting us into a recession or sending us in that direction, and hurting the economy by raising rates. So the Fed, politicians, you're usually going to see the politicians are going to get the upper hand. Okay, so the market began to price in and anticipate sort of a lightening up of how they load future hikes. And that's all that is. The market is just pricing in certain expectations, and we're seeing that reflected in assets, right? We see that reflected in equity index futures. For example, looking at the ES right now, you see that represented in Dow Jones, S&P, Russell, NASDAQ, riskier assets. So there's been this nice bounce across the board, but that has legs for only so long. And I think that we're getting to a point where the trend is getting kind of exhausted. I don't think we're back into up-only markets. I think that the trade that I thought would play out, which is we broke out of this 5-week range. I mentioned this in a tweet a while back. Broke out of this 5-week range. It was a clean range, right? Multiple weeks bracketed within each other. Broke out of that, remained accepted above 39. I said next target's 41 over the course of the next days and week. And we got that. And now we're at the most significant contextual level on the chart. We've taken these levels before in the past, so prior significant pivot, only to break down and continue. So that's where we are right now. And you're seeing that we've run into resistance right there. I want to say that, for the S&P, and the reason why I'm kind of drowning on about this is because clearly you just saw the last chart. The BTC is not doing its own thing right now. Like, you have people that suddenly, like, when there's money coming back into crypto and money coming out off the sidelines back into positions, bets being placed again. You have people that suddenly like forget about everything that's taking place. So don't forget, right? Bitcoin is the tail. The S&P is the dog, right? The tail does not wag the dog. So it's really important to understand where the S&P sits, right? And overall context, what's taking place. So I think you're starting to see that the market is realizing, and I started to see people post this today, and I mentioned this a week ago, that a lot of this trade has been pricing in an earlier pivot. And that's just, I don't think you're going to get I don't think you're necessarily going to get an earlier pivot. I still think 2023, mid 2023 is like highest probable outcome for BTC, maybe having bottomed by then, I think by the end of this year. And this is just my opinion, right? It doesn't mean I'm placing a trade on behalf of it right now. I bought spot, I hung out on some spot. But as far as futures positions, I'm out of most of my positions. But I'm thinking we bottom by the end of the year, by 2023, mid 2023. I think we're in a more certain trend at that point. But I think markets have a period of sideways to go through. I think that the worst is behind us. So I think that there's people that are talking about like further capitulation, and I just wonder where it comes from. You've had for something that is not something you could really concretely define, capitulation. We look at all these certain, it's very qualitative. It's quantitative too, because we have a certain amount of volume that exceeds, previous, historical values. It stands out, multi-sigma events, signs of major capitulation. We've had everything you could ask for plus more. And by plus more, I mean like we've had funds blow up. We've had the best traders in the market blow up. You've had 3AC go from the top to the bottom. I mean, what more can you ask for? We've like fallen from grace in every single way possible. So this has been capitulation, in my opinion. That doesn't mean anything though, right? You can't just like put a trade on that. It's just like how much at the lows, like how much more bearish could you get? All right, so let's look at BTC. So just understand who's doing the driving right now. It is the S&P. And if you look at the S&P, we just look at where it is for the last couple of days. We'll place our weekly VWAPs on this, weekly standard deviation bands. We had a really strong trending week. So the left side of this chart, you see that is I have the weekly VWAP on, and the right side I have daily VWAP and daily standard deviation bands. Why do I use daily standard deviation bands? And I used to leave this shit off the chart and just put it back on when I was streaming and then take it off. But I want to leave it on now so that I'm forced to explain it to you guys consistently. Because otherwise, I used to say in the past, let me take this off because it kind of like messes up the way that everything looks. It looks a little too cluttered. But I think that people that tune in now, they just want to learn about this shit. And they don't care about like me not leaving stuff on the chart that they're not interested in. If they're not interested in it, then they have another channel they could hopefully learn from. So weekly value, right? Daily value. One standard deviation, I set it to like 1.2. This is basically your daily value being established. You're going to see if this lines up with your value area high, value area low of previous days if you're looking at previous VWAP and VWAP standard deviation bands as well. Excuse me, I'm talking too fast. I had a Monster Energy drink today. Your VWAP standard deviation bands, I use 1.2 standard deviations. 1 standard to 2 standard. So it's 1.2 right here to 2. And this is 1.2 to 2 as well. So this is kind of where value is establishing. In a strong trending market, you're going to see that it's going to be holding outside of value consistently, sort of like what this did on the weekly. And then when it falls back into more rotational range-like behavior, you're going to start to see that it falls back into prior value. Same concept of value migration when we're looking at a TPO. Same concept of overlapping value when it starts to overlap, when you start to see trends cool off. So here's the S&P, right? We've been in a multi-week trend at this point. Very strong trend. It looks like we're finally cooling off at, again, the most logical area of resistance. This is the area I would want to see flipped, honestly. Until that occurs, I don't think you can be really bullish on crypto, right? I mean, it pays to understand who's doing the driving right now, and it is the S&P. As far as BTC goes, BTC and ETH. So let me lower this and I'll switch the screen real quick. So we'll go to top right. So this is BTC, or excuse me, this is ETH. This is BTC. So you could see I have the composites labeled. ETH was very clean. So the thing about this, right? So I talked about I took a short-term scalp, just a short-term short. It wasn't like an in and out scalp. After we broke outside of this value in the throwback, I think I got short at like 1679 or 1680. And I talked about 1600 being my initial target if we failed to accept back within 17. So the idea is like very clean overlapping value, very clean structure inside day originally, break out of that, but fell back into value for the following day. So 1 day, 2 day being an inside day, and then 3 day back within the prior structure. Just a very tight range, right? Very, very tight balance, and you're looking for a break from balance opportunity. So we get that break, price remains accepted, fails to accept back inside. If we accept it back within this range at 17, right? That's why I took the trade at 1680 because it was very tightly defined. If we trade it back within this range, you're just going to fall back within a very welcoming region, right, for prices. But not accepting back within there, my initial target was 16. Honestly, this is an area where you could find support, see sellers start to get offside, right? Because you have prior multi-day composite. It's like a week-long composite. If you look at VWAP standard deviation bands of the prior week, you see it doing something like this. All right, VWAP right around here, weekly VWAP, and this is ETH. So you're basically right now, we tested the prior value area high of that structure. You can see we had a good amount of soak there, so a good amount of volume done there. No major sign of any kind of offsides positioning, no major increase in open interest, nothing like that. But just, the market came into the level, sellers hit it, but it didn't continue to move lower. So we held that region, prior high, prior area of structure, significant level. I do think that the market isn't going to just give shorts an easy ride. So I anticipate that you probably take these highs again. After a really strong move like this, I don't imagine we're just going to about face and start breaking down from here. If the S&P continues to, let's say the S&P starts to take a dive, sure. I mean, BTC is looking weaker than ETH, quite significantly. If we just look at how value has transitioned over time, we're showing a very obvious lack of momentum in this trend compared to ETH. Right? If we go back and look at ETH, just the extension that ETH had is a little bit cleaner, a little bit more, consistent at the highs, able to hold this. There was a ton of chop up here. But BTC, you could see, is kind of just a little bit more muddy. You have this drift. If the S&P holds and BTC holds here, it's kind of the same setup as ETH, right? Where you have this multi-day composite between 23.6, 24,000. You have a brief trade opportunity there. If we reaccept back to the highs, I think that trade ends up being something like if you get back in there that just goes back to the highs and takes those highs, similar to the idea with ETH, that it doesn't just roll over like that. But if we are continuing to break down, I don't know why that line was there to begin with. If we were to continue to break down with BTC, I think same thing as ETH, right? So value area high, prior structure, value area low, pretty accommodating area for price to fall back within, honestly, for it to move from top to bottom, because there's not really much that took place on this move up. So it's kind of like this move up, this gap, kind of untested, unchallenged positioning. Bitcoin, kind of the same thing. So you have this, pretty ominous gap sitting below 22.4 all the way down to, 21.8. And it's more than likely, if you continue, you just fill that out. So just to be mindful of that. But getting back to the other screen. So, I mean, we have some soak right now, but it's not it's not moving on its own, right? I have on my other chart, I'm looking at Binance and Bybit. And like I said, it's not like we've had any really significant pickup. We had open interest drop off on Bybit more recently, going down from 42K down to 40K. So I don't know what the buzzing sound is, dude, but if no one else agrees with you, we could probably stop talking about it. Let me turn down. Maybe it's the gain. There's music in the background, so maybe that's it. It's not bothering anybody, is it? I don't think anyone else has said. Slight buzzing. Maybe if I do this. There's this button it's barely audible. It's buzzing, but not the end of the world. Nope. Oh, okay. All right. Well, anyway. So let's just switch around a chart real quick. Give me 1 second. All right. I'll just, rather than me changing a million different screens, I'll just pull these down here. All right. Where's BTC? So a couple things that stand out. Unit initially spot selling down with this rally. The one thing that does stand out for BTC, and this is just looking on a 30-minute chart over the course of this structure, because if you have a clean range set up like this, and the same thing with ETH, if you have a very clean range like this, you could see what stood out for ETH, specifically the absorption in the ETH margined futures. So if you look at this structure from left to right, very clean. Meanwhile, you have ETH margin futures just kind of mooning upward. Some of the activity we see is short covering, anticipation of maybe a further move up, traders getting chopped up over here. But the idea is either way, if you look at spot CVD going up and coin margin CVD and prices remaining flat, the pressure was in the offer at that point. And it's kind of like if we just isolate for the CVDs a little bit more, the action that we're seeing in price action relative to the activity we're seeing in CVDs is not really that impressive, right? And the same thing kind of with BTC. It's like if we zoom in and we just look at from a relative high standpoint. So local highs, wait, where's that? There's local highs right there. And then we'll just look at CVDs. You know, what stands out? So spot selling, right? And price has been moving down. So it's, you know, it's not like it was in vain and for nothing. So spot was actually selling and having an impact on price. And now you see that there's this big spike in coin margin CVD. And I mean, we could isolate this. So this is coin margin right there. You could see that, one sec. Why is that? I can't, where's the exchange box? Why can I not pull that up right now? That's a pain in the ass. I don't know why. Maybe I need to reload this. Either way, you can see that the highs are the same. CVD has continued to move up, and it has not led to the amount of activity that you would normally see, right? So if you're looking at, you know, if you're looking at, let's do this now. We'll just isolate this just to leading exchanges for perps. So most of that, ready? Find out where most of the volume has come from. Not BitMEX, not Deribit. One sec. Binance is where most of the activity came from, right? So Binance is where most of the activity came from. The idea was just the impact on price was kind of minuscule, right? For the amount of buying that actually came in. You could see Phemex picking up a lot of volume too. So that's quite interesting. A good amount of that from Phemex because there's been a lot of traders that have gone over to Phemex. I did not anticipate seeing that, honestly. But nevertheless, price not really moving much. He says OKX. No, it doesn't look like that, honestly. But anyway, so it kind of looks like there's a little bit of what? Distribution taking place, right? And here's what I think. Here's like my bigger picture thought. If you look more recently, and this is right here, this is the S&P. S&P was moving down. Bitcoin's kind of holding up right here, right? Initially, found a temporary floor, but you know, it's after hours now. We're into futures hours. I think that we might be approaching a point where, let's say that said they will take it out of the default aggregate group soon. Yeah. We're getting to a point where, let's say the S&P starts moving down again and starts correcting. I think there's a good chance that there'll be a decent lag between, and it's not like something that's, you know, very significant, but I think there's a chance that there'll be an actionable, what is actionable, what you're able to actually take advantage of, lag between the S&P and BTC and crypto as a whole. The idea is that I think that you've inspired a good amount of risk taking back in the crypto market. And I think that, as always, it'll be, I guess, the last one or the last participants to really take their medicine and accept that, you know, the bull market's not back on. And there have been, as you can imagine, I've been saying for the last couple of weeks, that this is not like the best area if you're not already in position to just start getting in a position. You know, absent taking trades here and there, but I'm talking about like building larger positions, larger swing positions. It's just a suboptimal area to get into position. And BTC, it's showing weakness, right? I mean, you could see just alone from being unable to accept back within yesterday's value. You know, we had a quick move through value from the Pelosi move. We'll call that the Pelosi move. But we're already reaccepted back outside of yesterday's value. Yeah, maybe we end up building a composite if we could hold these lows. But it's showing signs of weakness. And it's looked like across the board that you're seeing actually some de-risking. If you just look at open interest, there's no real pickup in open interest that, you know, aside from this up here when you had that long unwind, there's really no one that's getting really offside yet at the lows. So that's kind of what you would want. I mean, if anything, what you see is like some of the dips are being bought more by futures than anything else. It looks like. I mean, if you look at this is people, but if we look at ETH, we're briefly negative, but funding back in positive territory. Perps trading above spot. If we look at BTC, same story. So funding can be kind of a meme sometimes. You have to understand the overall context and liquidity conditions, especially because you'll have times where funding will either be very positive or negative, and it's just due to liquidity, usually after big moves. But this has now been a move that's been quite sustained. Now has been sustained entirely, on basically positive funding. So we haven't seen any major pullback yet. We're at a very significant level. And if you're looking to bid, I think you would rather see that, we have some kind of like very clear offside positioning. And for example, like in any kind of dip, what I would want to see is that, maybe overall levels of OI are good to go down because it just shows that you've had a good amount of selling come in, closing out, right? And maybe the move down is getting exhausted. But ideally, what I would want to see is that sellers really start to bet heavily against this move for any kind of squeeze further up. And it's not necessarily the case that we have that yet. So we're back into like rotational, choppy behavior. Like I said, I mean, if we're looking at BTC, and I'll just throw these back on, back within prior week's value, we're chopping around last week's VWAP, right? So we're in the middle of value of last week. And it was a trend day, so it's reasonable to expect that you have some kind of pullback during the structure that maybe returns back and cleans up some of these inefficiencies, right? We already had this one cleaned up. It's not entirely an inefficiency, right? Because this is a higher time frame chart. This is single prints, but the pullback could come back even further into this little gap. So I would just be a little bit mindful of that. Let's look at some of the questions. One sec. Where's the chart? Hold on. So things are kind of even right here too. So for example, just looking at CVDs, just sideways, right? And prices pretty much just sideways. So so coin margined and stable coin margined. So coin margined is when you put up Bitcoin to open up a position, right? And the thing about that is if you're long and price goes against you, you get screwed over twice, right? Because your position goes against you, and then I was gonna say the underlying BTC, but it sounded like I was saying Bitcoin. The Bitcoin goes against you. The margin that you have that's Bitcoin as collateral goes down in value too. So you get kind of double fucked at that point. So, that's the negative aspect of convexity. Shorts, it's the opposite, right? If you are shorting a Bitcoin margin futures contract and you're putting Bitcoin up as collateral, if you're short and price goes up against you, your profile is like this, right? So your losses are diminishing over time because the underlying Bitcoin you have that's collateral is going up in value. Whereas a profile of like a long going against you is more like this, speeds up. So as price moves against you, you're losing at an accelerating rate. So that's convexity. But a lot of people trade USDT margin perps now because there's a lot of stablecoin margined futures. And a lot of people would like to get into cash. They don't want to just get back into Bitcoin. You'll usually see Bitcoin margin contracts become more popular when the trend is a little bit stronger and when people start to think that maybe the bull market is back and they want to be exposed to the underlying and not, manage longer term swings and then trade also and be able to capture those moves when they're out of positions too. The thing about I guess more nuanced things also about stablecoin margin contracts is if you're like, let's say you're short a stablecoin margin contract, you're short USDT perps. If price starts moving against you, there's two buyers that you have to buy twice to get back into the market. So if you have a situation where there's a significant buildup in open interest in stablecoin margin contracts, and it's mainly from aggressive shorts opening, offside short positioning on the stablecoin margin contract, like it's very clear. I mean, obviously the OI is going to correspond to the stablecoin margin product, but what I'm saying is it's very clear that shorts are offside. That's potentially a very explosive move if the trend changes. Because if the trend changes, like let's say you have, price has been ranging for a really long time. Oh, stablecoin margin contracts doing this, mooning, and like basis is either very negative for a sustained period of time, funding is negative, or CVDs are down. Maybe you have a combination of all those factors. This short rally is probably a lot more explosive than a coin margin rally, because if you're short and then the trend is changing, you buy back to cover your position. And then if you're trying to get exposed again, you have to buy back just to get a Bitcoin position, right? Because you're not exposed by just being flat like you are if you're trading Bitcoin margined products. Stablecoin margin is easier on your emotional state, yes, because you're not always exposed. So yeah. So this is open interest right now for the last couple hours, but this is open interest since the beginning of July. Kind of what you would expect, honestly. So, open interest has gone up significantly. There were a lot of people that were flat completely out of the market. So there's a case to be made for, one sec. What's going on here? What is going on? Hold on. There's a case to be made for just healthy positioning coming back into the market, and it to not necessarily mean that there's like any kind of big trap that's being sprung. So for example, like Binance, here is open interest on Binance. But I mean, right now, what are we like 30 some odd % off the lows? I'm really good at remembering how far we're off the lows because I do this all the time where I kind of eyeball it. And yeah, so we're 30% off the lows. And we've just seen open interest come back into the market because what? There's a little bit more confidence come back to market. It's probably easier if I just do this to show you guys. And yeah, do you look at open interest, support and resistance? I do, but I just think about it conceptually as, oh, the market is more involved now. Like, oh, wow, the market is kind of like jump through hoop they were not willing to get through previously. So for example, great timing for what your question is, because I was just going to look at this chart. You can see we've broke trend. So if we're looking at, but we've done this before. So for example, from the highs, trend, break trend here, trend, and then basically edged over prior open interest there. So I think, there's money coming off the sidelines, getting re-involved. You've seen more risk taking because again, the markets as a whole have been a little bit more friendly, right? We've had some significant moves across the market. I pointed this out yesterday, I guess, and I said, be careful. So you guys remember when I used to stream and I used to share skew? I used to show these dashboards all the time, but it was on skew. Skew has, I no longer have a skew account. So Coinalyze is a great website. I look at Levitas, Coinalyze, and Genesis Volatility. I don't think I need to say that to anybody who's been watching for a while and following me because I know you guys already know that. But if you're ever wondering what I'm looking at, sometimes I'm on Levitas, sometimes I'm on Coinalyze. I don't know why I switch it up. It's probably because sometimes I'm looking at a Coinalyze chart and then I go into their global info. Or if I'm looking at Levitas, I might be like looking at the last 2-hour performance, 25 gainers, 25 losers, and then, just switching between one tab to the next. But so more recently, the dominance by altcoins has gone up and exceeded. We've seen this little flip. So BTC leading, altcoin dominance, being pretty depressed. And then we've suddenly seen more risk taking come back to the market. You've seen L1s rally. You've seen significant rallies in alts across the board. And I said a while back, it took a while, but I said like, you got to be careful shorting alts because there's jump risk, right? These things are going to bounce. It doesn't take much to move them. So we've had that now. So we've had all these things come together, right? And we're now also at the most significant contextual level for equities. So, you've had your rotation take place. Bitcoin not doing much. ETH moving mostly off narrative, off the merge, right? I say narrative because most things end up the same. Buy the rumor, sell the news, sell the release, right? Sell the actual date. But then you've had a rotation to alts, so a little bit more, like I said, people are a little bit more willing to take risk and extend further out the risk curve. Time to load up on shorts. Yeah, like I share my coin market man. I think has been down, which is kind of a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna lie, because Coin Market Man came out with a version 2, and the creator was kind enough to include me in the artwork actually on the main page, which was pretty cool. Me, Sat, Start, and a couple other people. And it's been down since, so I can't check out my performance aside from my just mental and exchange recorded performance, and just daily Excel notes that I take, right? But it's been down, but I feel like I've suddenly started to take a little bit more shorts intraday. I'm usually like 60-40. So I think you guys have seen it before. 60-40 longs, shorts, 55-45. But it's kind of split. But I've noticed, maybe just anecdotally, I've taken a little bit more shorts. We approach a high time frame resistance. That's just sort of the natural progression of things for me. I'm going to start pulling off of positions. Like I said, I started de-risking some things. I slept in some positions. Like I said, I slept in some positions more recently, but they were spot, right? And I think we've seen more people trade spot. There's been more of a focus on spot. And that's why I said a couple days ago, or maybe this is over a week ago now, spot CVD divergences might be really useful now, even though they always are, right? But I think that you might just see more action in the spot market because people were so sidelined that the thing that they're willing to trade first and foremost now is spot before getting comfortable enough to get into futures. So anyway, yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. Quantower API is not working with Bybit. Coin Market Man I can't log in, so I don't know what's going on with that. Top gainers turning into top losers. Synapse down. Well, let's go back to today. Just the beginning of today. Just a little daily relative performance. Synapse, Alice 1. All the small cap stuff. Ethereum Classic, people still doing well. Ape doing well. It's some Gucci news. What else do we have? I still think like everything has another push up, honestly. So that's why I'd be careful shorting. I don't think it's that easy now. For example, we'll just use this as an example. Wait a second, why just reload? We'll use here we go. ETH at high time frame resistance. It's a really obvious level, right? So that's the trouble with it. Is it just going to roll from an obvious level, or are we going to get some kind of 3-drive structure that squeezes up like this, and then we're all left to wonder, is this going to be a move that's much further, or is that a situation where we double tapped and now we're back below that prior level, which I think makes it obviously much more clear there. I still think no matter what, you're left with a market that's going to range. So where it ranges, is it between here, or is it back down between here for a while? Just let the chips fall where they will. Yeah, there's no trending movement. It's just rotational, choppy behavior. It's a good market to mean reversion trade in, right? It was a trending market briefly, but it's probably going to be a market to get back into like a mean reversion approach. Let me just get some of this off so I could. Said I didn't want to take the stuff off the charts just to clear it, but I end up doing it anyway. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens. You start to see that when value begins to overlap, and you have, again, just kind of choppy behavior, choppy rotational behavior. So I mean, if, for example, like if we were going to start trending down, you would want to see the values consistently established lower, and that we're able to hold something like the 1.2 two standard deviation bands of our VWAP, right? So if we're going to break down and outside of whatever consolidation we put in, if we're going to strongly trend, it's going to be against the exterior of this, right? As that's moving lower, and any kind of pullback to VWAP or pullback to prior value, right? That other standard deviation band might be a good area to get involved. I don't know if we're there yet, though. Like I said, meaning just play the slam the short button. 1.2. So the standard is 1, but I think my just experimentation, 1.2 does a better job of capturing how the daily value is actually being painted. So if you looked at like a VWAP with standard deviation bands of like a 1, and then looked at a volume profile with value area high and value area low, you'd see that it's a little bit off. So this is 1.2 and this is 2. So, if I'm looking to fade, it's between this threshold in a rotational environment, right? If we're chopping, if we're ranging, we're establishing value moving sideways, prior value, current value, where it's being established, these are areas you would want to get involved. It just makes it a little bit more in your face about, kind of a reminder of where you would want to get in positions. I guess the better way to put it is, if we are, pushing into these lows for the first time or just for the second time, we're already at one of these extremes, maybe not the best area to open up a position, right, in the direction of this move. So if we're ripping into, our second standard deviation there, it's kind of a trade you could leave off the table. If you're looking to short, right, you'd rather see some kind of move down that throws back and then holds that level, consistently holds value lower. And it's just like it's a more fluid way of looking at value that's a bit more static on a TPO or a volume profile. Same thing for a trending market, right? If one of the questions always is, how is value being established, or where is value being established? And like, let's say if we had, you have a bracketed market right here. If we're going to, let's just extend this forward like that's there. If we're seeing a trending move begin, you would want to see that what? You're holding the exterior of VWAP somewhere up here. And then the best area to get involved would be some kind of pullback to that VWAP, right? Pull back to the top of value or pull back to actual VWAP. Those are just better risk rewards, I guess, if you're taking advantage of value moving. So anyway, I finished for the day. Like I said, I installed the carbon fiber on my car. I took my mom to lunch. So I'm done for the day. I got to go set up my sister's TV. But I got all the stuff. So I mentioned this yesterday, but I had to get rid of the stream. I got all of these stuff. So I was waiting on this cloud lifter. But I was also waiting on something for my phone because I'm going to start vlogging. So this week I'll start vlogging. So if you want to follow the vlog, so I created a new YouTube channel. So that is this channel right here. Horses for Courses. I haven't really put anything up yet. I just demoed it. I did one stream, but make sure you sub to this channel because this is where I'm going to be posting a lot of shorts and then future longer videos. So I'm going to start getting back into putting out videos that are recorded, just to kind of touch base and catch up. I've been saying now for a while that I wanted to blog, but I'm someone who has a lot of things on their plate always. I also have something, and you guys know that the BlockRoots channel, right? My partner for the last, 3-4 years now has been Josh Rager. So he's my partner, and we've been working on something that we ideally thought was going to be released in June, right? So now it's August, and it's not released yet. And it's no fault of anybody. It's just, maybe it's even more recently the way things are like this, but things take time, right? You have an idea of when something's going to release or when you're going to be done with something. And it's always just good it's great to set deadlines, right? It's great to set goals. But if you're working with a bunch of people, you're working with specifically creators and copywriters, things take time. So what we created, the platform that we created, and you guys will see hopefully very soon, because I'm proofreading all this stuff on a daily basis, is hopefully going to be out. I want to say, ideally, I want to say we'll have a minimum viable product by September. But we've been working on that in the background for a while now. And it's not a lot of work on our part, but it's the people that we're working with. It's taking a while for them to actually create this, create what we're creating and what we're, contracting them to help us create. And you'll see hopefully very soon. But I wanted to vlog. So I'm creating I'm going to be vlogging on that channel. All right. So make sure that you go on to that YouTube and subscribe and put on alerts and all that. And that's that. I think that's it. Also, thoughts on managing OPM. So I mentioned this last night. I went through like a little bit of a backstory, a little bit more detail on my life. And I mentioned how, yes, I used to have my own fund. I'm not saying I'm Ken Griffin. Most people here, it's mostly in crypto, because if you're from the TradFi space, you know that their funds are a dime a dozen, right? So fund is, you have a legal structure to manage either pooled investments. You might be a commodity pool operator. You might be a CTA. You might be, you might have a hedge fund. You might be trading managed accounts through power of attorney. I've done that. But a fund is just a legal organization, right? You have partners. You have, private placement memorandum, Form D, articles of incorporation, and that's it. There's like 4,500 funds in the United States. So I, at one point, was managing other people's money. If you're a small fund, you could be nimble, right? But it's not really worthwhile for people to invest in a small fund, especially if the fund is trend following, momentum trading, the S&P 500, obviously individual names as well. But if it's just returning beta, because small money can do that, right? So unless you're managing between $200 to $1 billion, that's like the fund sweet spot. It doesn't make sense to have a fund. And managing other people's money is very stressful. So that is hands down, something that should be very obvious. Managing other people's money is very stressful. It's not really worth it, honestly. It's not worth it. And now it's like, back in the day, you could just have a fund as an individual, your Bloomberg terminal, direct market access, and you're good to go. I mean, that's a while ago now. Obviously, things are much different. So I don't advise anyone get into trying to manage other people's money. Incredibly stressful, not cool. People think like, oh, if you have your own fund, that must be like, I don't know. The idea of like a fund manager, it's just kind of silly. There's, like I said, it's like 4,000 fund managers in the United States. And the ones that you think of when you think of fund manager are like 20 people that are the creme de la creme de la creme de la creme. Most of funds are small organizations that are managing like, a basket of stocks and just returning the S&P and, aren't worth the 2 and 20 that they charge. So that's that. Paid channel. I don't know what that means. No, you don't have to pay to be part of it. No. I just want to get into putting out daily content, putting out daily shorts, being more in front of the camera. I think it's something that I enjoy doing. And honestly, so part of the reason why, so family office, yeah, but a little bit different than family offices, right? Family office, you're managing a very wealthy family's money. Family office is a lot more. It's like you're managing their estate. You're managing, you might be managing their properties. You might be managing their investments. Most family offices are going to be pretty conservative. Working for a family office, though, is a phenomenal job. Working as a, you could be a portfolio manager for a family office. You could work for a family office that has a little bit more of an aggressive approach also, or at least is putting somebody to work that way. And you could, You know, some family offices have like a trading arm. So, and I don't mean just placing a trade. I mean actively trying to seek out alpha. For the most part, not so much. Most wealthy people, asset managers, they turn into family offices, right? Anyway, what was I just saying? Oh, I want to, I want to change things up. I'm having a kid in 6 months. I don't want to be trading every single day. I want to be able to do something that's slightly different. I don't trade every day now, but I think, it's just, I like to switch things up, and I actually like, I like creating content. Yeah, I saw that. He resigned. Yeah. God, that guy's a risk taker. I want to say in 5 years from now, he looks like a genius, but listen, it's tough to predict the future. No one's good at it. No one's good at it. That's like another thing I have an issue with. Like, there's a couple people that have made good calls in this market, and, they're like suddenly talking like they're God's gift to people that follow them. Like, if you're good, I'll give you another morsel of info. And it's like, dude, shut the fuck up. You got one thing right publicly. We all get a couple of those. Shit, you've been trading as long as I do. You get a lot of them. One sec. I don't know what, I'm loosening this. Hold on. That's not what it's about. You don't make a living like trying to predict where price is going to be 6 months from now. Some people try to do it, but I don't know why the fuck this thing is loose now. Excuse me. Anyway, all right, I'm going to wrap it up, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to that new channel. Make sure you check out our partners at Phemex. Use the link Phemex.trade. They're usually running like 10 different promotions at a time. There's some news with the exchange. I can't share it yet. I don't think I can share it yet. Nothing negative at all. Actually positive. Really cool. News that I'm really happy about. It has nothing to do with trading, but it's just cool news, and I'm excited for it. So when I'm able to share it, I will. I'm not like trying to sell you out like, oh, they're going to release this. It's nothing to do with trading. It's cool. I like the people involved. So anyway, that's it. Have a fantastic